Hey, everybody, welcome to the show. So, if you've been listening for a while, I think we can all agree one of the biggest challenges facing entrepreneurs and business owners today is not necessarily having a great product, service, or solution. It's actually making sure the right people know you exist and trust you enough to do business with you. So, no matter how good your product, service, expertise, or offer is, if you haven't built trust and authority in the marketplace, growth is most likely always going to feel inconsistent. So, in today's marketplace, building authority has become essential, and the ability to position yourself as a trusted authority often determines whether opportunities come to you or whether, as a business owner, you're spending your time constantly chasing them. So, today we're going to explore what it takes to build authority, create trust at scale, and turn expertise into predictable revenue. Joining us today is Stephen Woessner, founder and CEO of Predictive ROI. And for over 30 years, he's worked in the trenches of agency new business strategy, working alongside and consulting with hundreds of agencies, teaching them how to plant their flag of authority within the markets they serve, grow their audiences, and fill their sales pipeline with a steady stream of right fit clients so they can win new business. He also hosts the Onward Nation and Sell with Authority podcasts. His agency, New Business and Marketing Insights, have been featured in major media, and he's the best-selling author of 5 books, including his latest entitled Sell with Authority. Stephen, welcome to the show.
Well,
Really
thanks very much,
excited.
Krista. It was very kind of you and Ty to invite me, and I really enjoyed our kind of green room conversation a couple weeks ago, I think it was, and
Yeah.
and I'm very excited to be here. So I'm grateful. Thank you for the invite.
Oh, well, we are very happy to have you here. So, I think where I'd like to start is you have a philosophy that growth becomes predictable when trust becomes systematic.
Hmm.
Tell me more about that.
I think it's very common, no matter what industry that you're in or that your listeners are in, where business development feels a little bit sort of like aimlessly wandering through the wilderness. But when we think about niche, when we think about going narrow, because that's where the gold is, when we take lessons from, let's say, the 1849 gold rush, the people who rushed into California, trying to strike it rich, most didn't. But the ones who did, paid attention to the geology, the flow of the river, where the deposits likely were. They paid attention to science. They paid attention to using the right tools to surface the next layer. They were patient. The ones who didn't win were the ones who were panning random riverbeds and working all sorts of different places and not staying in one place for very long to dig deeper. And so when we think about that sort of metaphor or story as it relates to business development, that when we get focused on a particular who, a niche, we go deep into that niche and we develop our expertise about being helpful to the business owners and their teams inside that niche. And then we speak to their business issues and challenges and pain points and how we might be helpful against that and to be helpful with those challenges and pain points. And then tying that into, the service that you deliver. And then what you teach becomes what you also then do. And that's a match. Then it becomes really easy. I shouldn't say easy. It becomes easier to teach and sell simultaneously. And so your audience feels like, because you are being helpful, but then also demonstrating what it is that you do. So those are the things when we think about kind of at a macro level, sort of the philosophy is to your point in the introduction. Yes, you need to build a position of authority. And then also when you do that, you can then start to build not only trust at scale, but some predictable demand because things are just a bit more obvious to your audience that you are there for them. You're their champion. And that's what it means to become a trusted authority.
So, in terms of entrepreneurship, and I think this is a big one, we see so many business owners chasing leads when they
Mm.
should be working to not only be an authority, but also be building trust. Why do you think that is?
Well, because I think that so let's go back to the niche piece. The typical entrepreneur is trying to sell anything to everyone. And that's really hard because then it's really hard to distinguish who you're for and who you're not for. And I know that, just getting started, we need to do everything we possibly can in order to keep the lights on. I get that. But the fastest path to revenue, even though it sounds sort of contradictory, the fastest path to revenue is to really see who you can help the most and who your experience aligns with the most, because that equals the less chasing. Now, will we always need to sort of pursue prospects? I think so. And partly, I think it's also that's how you develop relationships and so forth. But chasing out of desperation feels yucky. It feels yucky for you if you're doing it, and it feels yucky to the other person too. And the fastest way to step out of the desperation is getting really clear on who you can help and how you can help them, and then being super generous in how you teach it.
I think you mentioned, as you touched on our green room conversation. I think one of the things that came out of that was the question that you asked was, do you eat your own dog food? And that really stuck with me. Talk a little bit about that for a second for our audience.
Yeah. So, we again, in our world, we work alongside agencies. So, a little bit of forgiveness from your audience that some of this maybe need to be translated, but probably not a whole lot. And so we often find agencies who will say, "Yeah, we sell media. We're one of the best media planning, placement, whatever strategy agencies there is." And we're like, "Oh, awesome. So how do the media campaigns work for you? Like for your own business development?" "Oh, well, we don't do any paid media for our agency." "Huh." Or, we're a social media lead gen agency. "Oh, amazing. We've got this thing and it's got this and it's got that. And the Ebenetzers malfugulate with the Freebiscroids. And it's just so great. And it works so wonderfully for, prospects. And if we could just get people to buy it." I'm like, "Oh, okay. So how does it work for you when you implement that on behalf of your agency?" "Oh, well, we haven't done that for us." Or an SEO shop, right? Search engine optimization, or GEO, the brand new flavor, right? The AI generated search or generative search. "Oh, well, we don't do that for ourselves." I'm like, "Oh, okay." And I think it's just an oversight. And there's lots of different excuses about like, "Oh, well, we're so busy with client work and this and that and the cobbler's kids and all the different types of things." But I'm telling you, if you can't stand in front of your client and say, "When we did this for ourselves, we ran it through our lab and we did that experiment in our lab thousands or tens of thousands of times, and this is the data set. And that's why we think that you should do it too." If you can't do that, if you don't eat your own dog food, why in the world would anyone engage you? Nobody hires the out of shape personal trainer. Nobody. And you can like that example or not like that example, but it's a fact. Nobody's hiring the personal trainer that looks like me, candidly. Nobody's hiring the personal trainer that's sitting in the corner of the gym eating Pop-Tarts and drinking Mountain Dew. They're hiring the personal trainer who they want to look like. So if you're not eating your own dog food and implementing your own methodology, teach and do, you're wasting opportunity. You are missing opportunity, and you're adding friction to the sales process.
So if we're, as business owners, getting ready to invest in bringing a marketing agency on board with us, and that can be really challenging, I think. Capital can be thin when you're a startup and you're working to get something off the ground or even just past the startup phase. Every dollar counts. So what would be a specific question that we could leave, say, with all business owners listening, in terms of, or maybe top 2 or 3 questions that they could ask if they are interviewing prospective companies that they think they might want to work with? How can they suss out if they're eating their own dog food?
I think you just ask. I think what you just said right there, Krista, is the question. Ask, like, tell me or show me or help me better understand how you at agency XYZ eats your own dog food. You're suggesting SEO. Show me your SEO dashboard for your own content. You're suggesting that we do X, Y, and Z for our sales pipeline. Great. Take me inside your CRM and show me your sales pipeline. You're talking about a nurture campaign, open rates, click rates. Well, great. Take me inside HubSpot or whatever CRM, Keep for agencies, whatever CRM that the agency uses. Great. Take me inside yours. And I want to be able to see what a weekly nurture looks like. You want me to produce a series on YouTube? Great. Take me inside your YouTube channel and show me the metrics. I want to see the comparative between the last 30 days and the last 90 days. I want to see your subscriber count. I want to see your views. Show me your YouTube analytics. You want me to host a podcast? Great. Take me inside Libsyn. Show me your dashboard. Show me your numbers. How does the podcast generate revenue? How did the downloads contribute then to, opt-ins and lead gen and everything else downstream? Great. Show me how it works for you.
So would you also then ask if they have examples for any of the other clients that they've worked with that are alongside, could potentially even be your competitors? So would you find that to be very valuable? I think it's something I would want to know. Or are you more interested in how they're helping themselves than how they're necessarily functioning alongside someone who could be my competitor?
I think both are important. And I understand your point of view around why, especially the competitive piece, because I think that speaks to the knowledge of your particular industry potentially, and whatnot. So there are certainly some aspects of gold in that for sure. And then, forgive my bias, but I want to know if they eat their own dog food or are they just selling the stuff.
And if somebody is invisible online, let's say we're starting from scratch, where do you think that they should begin to think about building authority and trust?
Oh, okay. So let me give that back to you. Make sure I'm 100% on the same page. So you're talking about like if somebody listening right now, somebody in your audience is just looking to start building an authority position. Where should they start and how should they start to build it from there?
Yes. So my previous question was in tackling, like, if they're considering an agency, how do they suss out the ones that eat their own dog food? And now next is, should they really come to the table already having an idea of where they want to begin building authority? And if so, where? Or should we be deferring to the agency and saying, what are your thoughts? What's your proposal for where I should be taking?
So I'm going to answer your question, and I'm sure it's going to sound that I'm a little bit biased. And because we do get this question from agencies, consistently, and this doesn't mean that they're not already a successful shop, but they're wanting to move from essentially generalist agency and they want to step into a niche to really go deeper, to really accelerate growth for a wide variety of reasons, owner, leadership team, that kind of stuff or whatever. And so it doesn't necessarily just have to be somebody new. Agencies that have been around for a while or businesses that have been around for a while are really looking to accelerate growth, and niching down is a way that they can do that. Even though, again, I know that might sound a little kind of contradictory, going narrow. That seems like smaller opportunity. And the reality is you're stepping into abundance as opposed to scarcity. So when Drew McClellan and so he runs Agency Management Institute. So back in 2020, we did the research and gathered some things back in 2018. And then we wrote the book based on some of our mutual teachings and combined teachings. And it was published in 2020. Not a great time to actually publish a book. It actually went live on Amazon on March 13th, when most of the stay-at-home or work from home orders came out. But anyway, my point is that we built out a formula or a process, if you will, in the book for how to start and how to build an authority position. First ingredient, niche. Got to decide on who you want to be able to serve. It can't be, when I say, 15 or 20 different industries, industry is a lens for niche, but that isn't the only lens for niche. There's about 6 or 7 of them. And we discuss those in the book. But openly, it can be It can be industry, it could be expertise, it could be your, world class at solving a particular problem that nobody else is. So there are plenty of, again, in our world, agencies that, might have two or three different sort of categories or verticals or segments or however they want to categorize that. But there's a red thread that goes through them, right? They all share the same business issue and challenge, and they're world class at solving it. So step number one, choose a niche. Step number two is you got to get consistent in building cornerstone and cobblestone content. So, like this podcast episode, we would consider that to be cornerstone content. And so you have a consistent publishing of cornerstone content, big, meaty pieces of content that can be cut up into smaller cobblestones, emails, Insta Reels, YouTube Shorts, all the things. And then that leads into the third piece, which is don't be a one-trick pony. Don't just do one thing, one podcast episode or one YouTube video and consider that to be your authority position. It is not, right? So being consistent so that every time someone from your audience turns around, there you are with a helpful answer to an important question. That's an authority position. And doing it over time. It's not just 6 months and you're like, whoo, that was fun, right? I mean, we launched our first podcast back in June of 2015. We have almost 1,300 podcast episodes, 5 books, and we've really invested deep into this space because the bar has been raised. And so being consistent is incredibly important over time.
So within your content strategy, because that sounds like a fantastic content strategy. So within that, what are you looking at specifically, or what would you be looking at if you were looking at someone's business specifically to know whether it's really driving business growth or it's just creating attention for them? Because I think those are two different things, right? So you can put a lot of stuff out there, you can be getting a lot of attention, but it might not necessarily translate into growth. So how do you know if your content strategy is on point other than just, hey, my sales ticked up last month?
Yeah. And whether or not the content strategy, because we've seen lots of businesses over the years make this mistake where, let's say the owner, the founder, whatever, has a passion project and they think, oh, I have always wanted to have a podcast on X. Probably shouldn't say X since that's the formal name of a channel, but I've always wanted to talk about, ABC. Geez, I'm just doing it all. Now it's a TV station. Anyway, but you get the point, right? They've always wanted to have a show about whatever their passion project is. And then, they start recording episodes and for the first 30 or 40, it's fun. And then after probably 60 or 70 or 80, they're like, well, has this really benefited the business? And no, because, you might have an audience, but that's presumptive to think that your audience is also, prospective customers, unless you plan it that way. And so I think the mistake that is often made is to start producing content without a clear hook into the business. If you're not giving your listeners, your audience, your readers, your whatevers, your audience a clear path from the content that is really helpful to them over to your business, then it's a huge missed opportunity. Right? We need to create that literal bridge between what you teach and what you do. That does not mean you have to be salesy in your content. That's not what I mean. But if you have a podcast on, underwater basket weaving, but you're an agency, in the healthcare space, that's not going to work. And that's obviously a ridiculous example, but that mistake happens all the time where there's not a clear path between content and what the business actually does.
Actually, I think that was a great example. I had a really fantastic mentor who said, exaggerate when you teach, refine as you go. So that's such a clear example of a mismatch there. So the mismatch, would you say that's potentially the biggest mistake? What are some other mistakes that you've seen businesses make when they want to come out with their content strategy and then also positioning themselves as an expert?
I would put into that category not being generous enough. And way back in episode, I'm probably going to get this wrong, so forgive me. Back in like maybe episode 326, maybe of Onward Nation, I interviewed for the first time. His name is Jay Bear, and he's phenomenal. And so as Jay and I were talking, he said, I think that, business owners make the mistake of thinking, oh, this is my special sauce. I can't let that out of the bottle or out of the can or out of the whatever, because if I do, whoo, who would hire me? He's like, that's nonsense. He goes, you can Google McDonald's Big Mac special sauce and the recipe is there. Nobody's making Big Mac special sauce or whatever it's called, at home and right for their own at home Big Macs. Nobody's doing that. Maybe a few people, but their market share has not gone down because people are building Big Macs at home. And so his point was like, you need to teach everything that you do and teach it in such a way that it's so generous that people are left with, wow, if they would be that generous in helping me for free, what could the experience be like if I gave them money? And so don't be concerned about giving away your secret sauce. Those people who are going to steal it and take it were probably never going to be your clients anyway. And instead, think about who can I go all in on in serving and teaching everything in full transparency. So they're like, wow, if Krista was that awesome to me and she doesn't even know who I am, what would it be like if I gave her money?
So that sounds to me like a great way to have a steady pipeline of right fit clients, people who look to you for baseline information and then think. And I think that next step, right, is actually making the Big Mac. Well, how do I take all of that? How do I implement that? And how do I make that work inside my business? So, and I know right now I see people going to like AI, for instance, for a lot of things, writing content. But maybe that content isn't necessarily producing as well as they want to. We still need the expert to come in and oversee everything. So, how do you see AI really making a play into what agencies are doing right now with content? I mean, how do you see them not being edged out when it comes to content strategy with AI sitting there?
I think it's totally up to them whether they get edged out or they don't get edged out. We talk to agencies every single day and we often ask a flavor of this question. And specifically, like, how are you using AI inside the shop today? And the most common answer is, oh, we use Chat GPT and we use Nano Banana and we, blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, oh, okay. So let me clarify. How are you using agentic AI? And that's typically where it stops. Now, are there some agencies in our community that we're familiar with who are using agentic AI? Of course. But when you start going into how are you using Claude Cowork? How are you using Claude Code? How are you using Manus? How are you building your own MCP connectors? How are you, integrating all of those things with a variety of other tools with API keys and so forth? How are you using that to optimize your workflows? How are you using that actually to deliver outcomes faster? It's not about being able to write 7 emails in the time that it used to take you to write 3 if those 7 emails stink, right? Or it's not about creating an ebook faster. It's about how can you leverage AI to deliver the outcomes that clients want faster without cheapening the work, but actually raising the bar in the quality of the work. We are very transparent in how we use AI here at Predictive and how we use specifically agentic AI. And if that delivers our clients, our agencies, result outcomes in their sales pipeline, they're all for it. Right. So I think that is the issue, is that agencies are so scared about being displaced by AI, they're missing the opportunity
To service their clients better by using it.
Yeah. I mean, we have had clients say, wow, the way that you guys are using AI to accelerate things and to pull together like right fit client dossiers to do research at scale, like deep research and all of that, that is really awesome. Great.
So
and no one has said, I expect that you would charge us less for that. No, because we're applying our high level strategic human thinking to other aspects of the business by letting agentic AI do some other things. And that's a huge advantage. And I wish more agencies would do it as opposed to being afraid.
So for us as business owners, then we shouldn't consider them using any type of AI as cutting corners or cheating or cheapening what they're doing and how they're delivering service to us then is what I'm
Well,
hearing. If they're using
okay.
it the right way.
Yeah. And so now I'm going to say yes and no, which now makes it sound like I'm speaking out of both sides of my mouth. I think it depends on what you're engaging the agency for. If you're engaging the agency for sort of some base level content and, excuse me, some base level content or something like that, um, then I think maybe you would want to see like how the agency could either provide you with some tools that you could use. I think it depends on the depth and comprehensiveness of the engagement. And whatnot. So, but there again, also, if somebody in your audience is thinking, well, gosh, I would like to have an agency maybe build out so just a few content pieces and that kind of stuff, whatever, then I would encourage them to experiment on their own inside Claude in building out some workflows in Claude Cowork or using tools like Manus or whatever. And then once they have that, because again, going back to your earlier question about like, how would somebody start? If somebody is at that point, I think there's so much available to business owners today that they can do and do on their own. And that could be enough for a little while.
Thank you, Stephen. Boy, you've given me a lot to think about. I think you've given all of us a lot to think about. If you could leave us with one thought, something you think is the most important thing that you would say, what would that be?
Okay, so I'm going to go in a completely different direction, and in fact, it'll sort of hook into what you and I were talking about before you hit record. Um, so back in 1902, Peter Marinitis was born in Istanbul, Turkey, and at the ripe old age of 8. He was growing up in Istanbul, Turkey, when it was not awesome to be a Greek in Istanbul, in particular, a Greek male. And his father went to work one day and then didn't come home because he was killed for being a Greek male in Istanbul. He was a victim of ethnic cleansing, and Peter lost his father at the ripe old age of 8, dropped out of the 3rd grade to be the man of the house in 1910, to take care of his mom and his 2 younger siblings. And he had a dream to eventually, that horrid act sparked a dream that he would eventually make it to the United States. And when he was 18, he got that chance. And he made it to the United States. He made it to a small little town in Ohio called Canton, Ohio. He followed a whole bunch of other Greeks at the time. And after 6 years of working on the night shift at a Canton, Ohio, downtown Canton, Ohio restaurant, he'd saved enough money to start his own restaurant. And that was 1926. So not great business planning time because it was right before the Great Depression. But he married the love of his life in Julia Kitsaris, and they had 4 amazing kids along the way. He gave away more soup than he ever sold. And if you, like during the Great Depression, if you ask Peter many years later, why did you do that? And he said, Jesus is coming back someday. I don't know what he's going to look like, so I'm just going to be nice to everybody. And so Peter, I have the blessing and privilege of being one of Peter's 10 grandkids. And we've all been business owners in some way, shape, or form. And you can see, like behind me right there, is I know for your audience who are just listening and not seeing the video, they can't see that. But I have a photo behind me on my office wall, and it's a photo of my grandfather standing behind the lunch counter of his first restaurant. And there's a few gentlemen sitting there at the lunch counter, eating soup and sandwich for a nickel. And I have that there because there are some mornings or some late nights where I'm tired. Then I would just rather maybe be doing something else or sleeping. And that photo gives me the courage, gives me the motivation, gives me the determination to hit send one more time answer one more email, take one more phone call, record one more thing. Because my grandfather, in spite of all of the odds, he never, ever, ever gave up, never quit. And so I would encourage your audience that no matter how bad of a day they're having, no matter how bad of a week they've had, no matter what the obstacles are, Sylvester Stallone one day, when he was so broke before he wrote the script to Rocky, he was so broke that he sold his dog for $25 because he was starving. So no matter how bad you think it is, and I'm certainly not trying to discount anyone's circumstances, but no matter how bad it is, I just encourage you not to quit because there is another side to it.
I love that. How can we have everybody follow you, connect to you, learn more about what you're doing?
Best place to find me is either LinkedIn. So Stephen Woessner, last name is spelled Woess, as in Sierra, Ner. So find me on LinkedIn. You can find me on Instagram, predictiveroi.com. There's a whole bunch of free resources there. So, any of those options would be helpful.
Stephen, thank you so much for joining us today. It has been an absolute pleasure having you on the show, and I look forward to talking to you again soon.
Thanks, Krista, very much for the invitation. It's very kind of you, and it was a delight being here with you. Thank you.
All right, everybody. Until next time.